Hello and welcome back to another video. I'm so glad you're here. On this channel, I talk about news, controversies, and drama on the bookish side of the internet, and I certainly hope you will stick around. So it's hard to believe it's been this long since I last made a video about Audra Winter, and I finally feel like there's enough to say to warrant a whole video, so let's get into it. If you've been keeping up with this situation on your own or through other creators, you may have heard a lot of this before, but hopefully you'll keep watching. And before I start, and I'll talk about this more later on, I need to mention that Audra has come out as trans and is now going by the name Milo and using he, him pronouns. So even if I'm talking about things that happened before transitioning, I will be referring to him as Milo throughout the video. So for those of you who may have missed the earlier parts of the story, I'm gonna link the playlist up here so you can get all caught up. So going all the way back to September 14th, Milo made this post on a Facebook page for his university looking for someone to take over the lease on his apartment. It's not hard to find his legal name, but I'm not going to be part of anyone finding out, so I'm blocking all that out, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there it is. Urgently subleasing, immediately available, take over my lease, and I'll give you a free bed, desk, and office chair, along with more freebies, your choice. I'm leaving the country on the 24th of September and preferably want someone to take the lease over by October 1st. And there's a whole bunch of, specifics about it. And the part that I'd like to emphasize is the bit here that says, I am relocating to Finland on a 2-week notice, long story, and cannot bring my furniture. Most of it is very new and in great condition as I am a small business owner who used the space as a home and office. I'd rather have someone take the furniture for a steal than pay movers to throw things in a storage unit for an undetermined amount of time. You can bargain with me, blah, blah, blah. I will consider handing over more of the for sale items for free if you can take over my lease ASAP. The free mattress/bed, office chair, and desk alone amount to somewhere in the 1,000 range. All this stuff. So, desperation. Now, given that this was an extremely short notice move, and he posted this over 2 months ago, you have probably gathered that yes, he did end up moving to Finland, which is a strange thing to do, to say the least. Now, to be honest, I don't really care about the updates regarding the actual content of the book, so I won't be discussing all of the Patreon updates with nothing but those types of things. So on September 16th, we got a post by Elrose, who remember is the project manager, with some sneak peeks of chapter 2, and then she gave an update on the pace of things. So this says, regarding our slowed pace, there's lots of logistics behind the scenes, chief among them being that Winter is in the process of moving. Looking back, I wonder if Winter is being referred to as Winter for a reason that we now know. Not the most ideal time for it, but the political and economic climate of the US is concerning, as I'm sure you know. The bright side is that a big reset and renewed focus await. They'll be moving to be in close proximity to Solly, and they'll be able to work on the second edition together in person. We're all excited to see what new vigor this brings. That does mean we probably won't have much more to share next week either, as that's the week of the actual relocation itself. Sorry about that. We anticipate a strong return once Milo is settled in. For everyone, but especially those of you who are in the US, like Caitlin and I, look out for each other, find your people, and hold them close. We keep us safe. So he is definitely moving, and, I didn't really discuss this before, but, it's really odd. I definitely don't blame anyone for wanting to get out of the US right now, but that is a huge move to just decide you are going to do, which is speculation on my part. I guess he could have been planning this for a while, but it's the, urgently selling off his furniture and getting someone to take over the lease that gets me. And I do want to mention that his team had done a pretty good job of keeping the Patreon active up to this point, with frequent posting of the world building, artistry stuff, and occasionally some writing, but, credit where credit is due. The next post comes September 30th after Milo is all moved over to Finland. 9:30 update settling in. Milo has completed the relocation. He and Solly have already begun working on what's next. Some new writing is coming soon. The goal was today, but Winter had a health scare that kept him bedbound or at the doctor's for all of yesterday and today. Currently recovering after some treatment. Here's what's coming up. getting the big picture of Age of Scorpius sorted, a chapter-by-chapter analysis to look at the story's pacing, flow, and information delivery. All big weak points that Caitlin identified. This will take some back and forth between author and editor, but once it's ready, we'll be showcasing that. Voice was another issue. To work some of that out, Milo is test driving some of the rhetorical techniques for the revised edition in a creative nonfiction piece. So, not too much to comment on that, just that he had a health scare and was taking some time to recover. So on October 7th, we get an update from Milo, kind of. So this says 10-7 update, words from Winter. Hey everyone, Winter and Solly have been making good progress, but none of the projects we mentioned last week, full outline, creative nonfiction, and animatic, are ready for release yet. 2 of those projects are directly addressing major problems in the first edition of The Age of Scorpius. Another major problem, perhaps the most critical problem, is that the book definitely got rushed out under unexpected pressure, with several key steps not done properly. Copy, edit, beta readers, or not done at all. ARC readers. I was personally hoping for a quicker stream of content by now, but I think given the amount of upheaval that Winter's gone through recently, both personally and professionally, that wasn't a realistic expectation to set, so that's on me. Here's a message from the author himself. Good things are happening. I just need some extra time because I am most definitely writing and recovering my voice, but after what's happened, I'm far more hesitant about sharing it with the internet until it's really where I want it to be. There's more from Winter below for our patrons. Fully honest, I've been going through a lot of inevitable but good emotional bumps and adjusting to huge changes in my life. Though I have been seeing my creative spark return, it's not in writing that I can share yet. It will have to be another simple update again this week. Sorry about that, I appreciate you all. The truth is I'm recovering from what was a critically dangerous mental state. I was deeply affected by the amount of backlash to both the book and the revision announcement. Lately, being an artist has meant processing this experience of my deepest fears, worries, emotions, and memories to turn that back into the art itself. This is a moment that I truly feel needs to be unpressurized. I struggle to focus knowing that there are expectations for me to go, go, go. It's hard when I'm writing pieces that are shining as some of my best work, but I don't feel able to share them publicly yet. I'm sure once I get back into the swing of Age of Scorpius that the weekly updates won't bug me or feel like too much pressure. But at the moment, the emotional intensity of life weighs very heavy on my writing. Creatively, this is great, but I do need adequate time to channel this storm of experiences into a coherent expression. So I want to once again mention that these updates that are putting too much pressure on him and stressing him out are self-imposed. For weeks, everyone was telling him you need more time than till next spring to get this into a proper book, but he stuck to this timeline and now it's causing unnecessary stress. If it were me, I would just get rid of the Patreon completely or make it all free, so the expectations of getting any news are much, much lower, and there really is no need to update at all if nothing warrants it. And there's still only 31 paid members, so even assuming that every single one of them has the $5 tier, they aren't even making $200 a month from it. So it seems like it would be a simple fix, and luckily, someone on his team advised him to do this. This came on October 9th and says, on pause. Hello everyone, we're going to pause Patreon billing for the time being. Since the last writing updates have had so little to show, we've been in ongoing conversations about the pace of work. There's also the spring 2026 deadline for the revision to think about. We still want to hit that. But as Winter mentioned in the previous update, returning to a good pace is proving more difficult than anticipated. He needs time to adjust to a big change in living situation, but also to process and internalize everything that's happened, so he can move forward clear-headed. Everything in his life is saying this is the time to slow down and take stock, not speed up. Yeah, agreed. The team as a whole has slowed down a lot as well. Drink when anyone says the team. Currently, the only active members are myself, Milo, Caitlin, Sully, and my role has diminished significantly. I've returned to spending most of my time on other work for over a month now. In light of all this, I suggested we pause the Patreon as we aren't going to be able to deliver the promised updates during this time. It seems like the right thing to do to respect everyone's investment rather than to keep setting goals for content we can't hit. To everyone who's been following us here, and particularly everyone who's been gracious enough to become a patron, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We will be back to show you how Age of Scorpius shapes up in round 2. I've learned through all of this not to give an exact date, but after all our conversations, my estimate is roughly 1 a month. This aligns with Patreon's pause feature. It goes 1 month at a time. If we can return sooner, we will. If we have to wait longer, I will let everyone know. See you in about a month. So yay, everyone's taken a nice step back. As mentioned, his team currently consists of Solly, the art director, Elrose, the project manager, Caitlin, the editor, and Milo. I'm sure this major shrinking of the team has to do a lot with having no money to pay them, and not just having work for them, but I also want to think that he's starting to finally take the advice of everyone who said, like, he needed to focus on the book before anything else. But no, on November 10th, the Patreon was unpaused. Hello everyone, we're back in action. Winter's newest piece of writing, High Disturbance, will be launching for everyone to read on our website very soon. Originally, we wanted to launch it with this post, but there's been some last-minute changes Winter needs to implement. Should be ready within the week. New Patreon schedule. Moving forward, we're going to slow the pace of posts in order to put less pressure on the team, free up resources to pour into the revision process, and ensure we can meet the expectations we set with y'all. We will still be providing revision updates, world-building posts, and art posts, just less frequently than before. Here's our new schedule. Once a month, Winter will provide an author's update with progress on the revision, excerpts, and behind-the-scenes looks into the process for all patrons. These will start in December, when there will be progress to write about. For November, High Disturbance will take the place of this update. Chapters 2 and 3 will still be publicly available for free once completed. Also once a month, our editor Caitlin will write a column for patrons providing her perspective on the revision's progress that was achieved in the previous month. These will also start in December. Weekly on Fridays, there will be a post for Moon $5 patrons, alternating between world-building/lore drops and exclusive art/process dives. We'll take holiday weeks off for these, but they'll start this week. Since this schedule cuts the monthly post volume in half, expect a bit more depth to each post. The extra time for writing updates will give Winter and Caitlin much more ground to cover, and I'll be able to put more into each Friday post. If the revised schedule makes you want to alter your patronage in any way, I totally understand. If you're sticking around, thank you. We'll see you soon for the release of High Disturbance. So this is definitely a more realistic schedule. It'll be interesting to see if they stick with it. So, High Disturbance. This is a super long essay, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will, of course, add the link to the description if you'd like to read it in its entirety. So, we've heard a lot about it in older TikToks, but Milo calls himself a naturalist. So, a lot of this essay is him kind of using his experiences and knowledge of forest fires as a metaphor for everything that happened last summer. So let's start. High Disturbance. I will say the art, the layout, looks great. Forestry is a passion of mine, one that appears in the very first chapter of The Age of Scorpius. Conviction Woods is a cursed temperate rainforest resembling Tongass National Forest, the largest cold rainforest in the world at nearly 17 million acres. I started my journey as a naturalist 3 years ago when I began guiding van and boat tours in Colorado and Alaska. While advancing through a degree in restoration ecology, I volunteered, worked, and studied in the Tongass, Roosevelt, and Arapahoe National Forests. Most recently, I toured guests out of Denver for sightseeing and hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park. After I published a shitty book and became the most hated author of the year, I drove toward a wildfire in the Colorado Rockies, where smoke hazed the sky and a red sun glared through the atypical September heat. I hadn't been bothered to look up the fire's exact location. If my favorite canyon was aflame, I would have found myself blindly amidst a wildfire. At that time, walking myself into a wildfire would have been no more than a spark in my burning life. I was already standing at death's edge after barely surviving the week prior. I ignored my raw throat and strained lungs from the ash-laden air. These were becoming mundane grievances with each summer I lived in Colorado. Through the passing years, I have watched annual plumes of smoke thicken on the silhouette of the foothills, the rising number of fire-impacted acres, the increased frequency of fire weather warnings, and the 70-degree summers atop the alpine tundra. So I'm gonna skip some stuff here. It's just more about like the actual forest fires. As I wrote down the details of my surroundings in my pocket notepad, I cried with the realization of how I needed to take her silent advice. If she had caught fire, she either would survive and thicken her bark, or she would die to let the future forest regrow. I had two choices. I would either endure the flame, thicken my skin and grow higher, or I would let it burn me alive to pave the way for my rebirth. I slipped into a mental health episode that same night, one so severe that I was unconscious for close to 3 days. I woke only to eat, drink, and take care of my animals. My terror, stress, and heartbreak were so intense that I did not want to be conscious and feel them. It was the apex of a spiral that had begun in July and worsened each day since. I ended up taking the middle path of the cottonwood. I would stay grounded to fearlessly accept the heat and set myself on fire to grow back stronger. Though dangerously close to death, I fought with the strange sense that something good was coming. I struggled to describe it, but I intuitively understood that I needed to face north and sprout. The skeleton of my burned forest had to be left in the past. With that in mind, I decided I would only fight harder for my passion. I booked a ticket to Helsinki, Finland, and gave myself 2 weeks to move out of my apartment. Over the past 2 months, I watched as the internet's anticipation grew, even with my face a mystery, even with my voice absent. Content creators dug for any signs of life underneath my ashes, clawed at my apartment's sublease listing to try to understand each of my moves. The pressure crushed my shoulders. I caught flame and burned alive for all to see. My signs pointed to death. The sparks started by my own killed the last of my life. But I refused that fate. I am a survivor. I always have been. I know how to fight my battles and overcome adversity. Each time I burn, each time I lose all, I rise stronger than before. The forest has always been adapted to the flame. The lodgepole pine, for example, has serotinous pine cones that open and release their seeds when exposed to the intense heat of a blaze. My rebirth comes from underneath the charred trunks and blackened stones. My saplings are nurtured by the north-facing sun. Though this forest will regrow slowly, it will be tougher now. It is new, no underbrush to catch flame. I am shielded by the shadow of my own death. I face forward toward the north. I do not look back to the south behind me. I take the gentle warmth of the sun and pull myself from the dirt. I will regrow this forest step by step. I will heal the ecosystem beginning with this piece. Let me tell you how hot a high disturbance fire burns, the one that came from the spark of publishing an absolutely terrible book. Hold on. Oh, right. I'm Audra Winter, that one author who went viral for my bad writing. What does ecological education have to do with addressing the controversy? I'll talk about it, don't worry. First, I wanted to speak toward a larger controversy, one that will affect every single one of us. I made a vow to myself as a naturalist that any voice I was given, any platform I could stand on, I would try to raise awareness for all the wild places we call home. The world is burning and we will burn with it. We are not taking enough action for the climate. It must be done now. The first step to movement is understanding, so let me retell this story, as it was the truth behind each whisper and rumor. I couldn't breathe through the smoke. I needed time to let it clear my lungs. Writing this piece was so intensely personal and vulnerable that I had to step out of the flame to first gather my bravery. But art requires vulnerability, and I cannot be an artist without first being vulnerable. So here goes nothing. My name is Milo Winter. I am the creator of the world of Gardian, and this is what it's like to become hated for the thing I love the most. On July 28th, my peaceful morning TikTok For You page scroll was abruptly interrupted as I scrolled upon a video from another independent author. He was talking about how he just finished the worst indie book he'd read in a long time. As any reasonably paranoid author would, I kept watching his video. Though the other author said he wasn't saying names, he proceeded to talk about pre-order numbers that I had accomplished. I felt my heart drop with each sentence he spoke. He lectured on the importance of hiring editors and quality control in independent publishing. Horror rushed over me. He'd presented false information, that my book wasn't edited, as a concrete fact. Within hours of his video going viral, I faced an inferno of my nightmares racing at me. I had done everything I could to put out a strong book. I started my publishing process in February by hiring 2 editors with my scholarship money. I allocated a vast majority of my startup funds to both a developmental and copy editor, then slowly increased my team of artists as the pre-orders began to take off. My developmental edits were returned to me in March, before the pre-order chaos. My copy edits were returned to me in April, in the heat of the pre-order chaos. During this time, I was constantly in shock, exhausted, and overwhelmed from a rapid business startup. And in the haze of implementing my copy editor's suggestions, I failed to notice that the edits themselves were insubstantial. In September 2025, Reedsy, the platform I hired both my developmental editor and copy editor through, initiated an investigation on the edit passes I'd received and requested third-party feedback from editors uninvolved in the project. I ended up receiving a full refund for my copy edit pass. Both Reedsy and the third-party editors agreed that the copy edits I received for the first edition of The Age of Scorpius were not up to par. My copy editor reached out to me during Reedsy's evaluation, kindly apologizing and expressing her sympathy about the entire situation. But at the time of seeing the July 28th video, I didn't know that. To my understanding, I'd tried my hardest and done everything I could with hiring 2 experienced editors. It was too late to realize how massive of a mistake I made. Within hours, I was receiving hundreds of comments on my videos. My worst nightmare was on repeat every minute and hour of my day. It only worsened from there. And then this is kind of like fuzzy graphic is a collage of negative comments he received. So, art. The ones that hurt me the most, though, were the accusations that I'd intentionally published a bad book. Scammer. That word, it was the worst burn by far. I had reinvested all my funds from the pre-orders back to bettering the book. I'd never properly paid myself. I didn't feel the need to, if Gardian was the thing that mattered to me most in my life anyway. I was plenty happy bringing other people joy with my world. I started a company, tried to give some artists a secure job, and adjusted into a space to pack and ship 5,000 books. All I wanted to do was tell my stories. Each refund process turned a part of me to ash, the thing I'd worked so hard on. Someone hated it so much they wanted to return my art back to me. It wasn't good enough for them. Next was the conspiracies. Maybe I was a Nepo baby or an industry plant. What if I paid for my followers? Did I constantly monetize my videos? Surely I used AI. People started taking the word of others for fact. I'd been as genuine and honest as I could in my content. People were assuming the truth behind words I'd never even said. I was being attacked, harassed by repeat individuals, and told some of the cruelest things I'd ever heard in my life. Even when I tried to speak about how much it was hurting me, I was told I was being too dramatic. Be emotional and I'm an attention seeker. Be casual and I'm too informal. Be formal and I'm too corporate. Be genuine and I'm too immature. Be confident and I'm narcissistic. Be authentic and I'm pity marketing. Be hurt and I'm too sensitive. Be proud of myself and I'm too cocky. Redo the book and I'm money obsessed. Nothing I could say was the right thing to say. The nightmare only worsened. I was cyber-stalked by complete strangers who began obsessing over my personal life. Some tracked down my full legal name and encouraged users to comment it on all the videos they could find about me. Others had to expose the GoFundMe I used to crowdfund my service dog Smidge. Smidge is considered a medical device prescribed to me by my doctor. Half her cost was paid for by my state's vocational program, and I crowdfunded the other half. With my disability thrown out the window, I was accused of being a money-hungry grifter who stole donations. I made a TikTok page a couple years back to help crowdfund Smidge. I had no idea I hadn't deleted it. I deliberately avoided talking about Smidge on my main page, as I'm someone who is recognized in public. I developed agoraphobia for the first time. I stopped leaving my apartment. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. I covered up my tired eyes and stress-swollen face with a mask of makeup. I tried to pretend like being perceived wasn't impacting me much more deeply than I had realized. I lost weight, reduced to skin and bones. I struggled to speak, struggled to talk, struggled to feel my passion. I fantasized death, haunted by the ghosts of my mistake. Without any sense of safety, I could not find my comfort, and I hadn't recognized myself in the mirror for months in the first place. I tried to reassure myself by reading my own book. Surely it couldn't be that bad. It was. It was that bad. I was overwhelmed with disgust and disappointment at my own writing. I couldn't believe myself, the errors I'd made, the mistakes I'd passed right by. It wasn't even close to what I knew I was capable of. Why did I release a debut so weak compared to other writing I am so much prouder of? What in the world happened? What was I thinking? Was I thinking? No, I couldn't have thought clearly when I was living in so much shock and overstimulation during my editing phases. My writing was confusing, my voice was fragmented, my characters weren't shining through. I was furious at myself, swallowed by my own humiliation and enragement, sickened by my own audacity. My sales came to a screaming stop. My revenue projections were thrown out the window. I had a team of 20 artists I was either contracting or employing. All of them were furloughed. I failed them with my entrepreneurial attitude. I took financial risks and put all 6 figures back into my business. My business, the same one that suddenly stopped making money. Why the hell didn't I put some back into my savings? I couldn't even stay afloat myself. How had I cared more about Gardian than protecting my livelihood? Then it hit me. If I didn't turn it around fast, I was back to square one. But I failed at that too. Here we are, back at square one. The fire has been extinguished. There's no more underbrush to fuel it. Yet many of you who are reading this will try to take these same words and use them against me. You and I, we're more similar than you realize. There is a fundamental value we all share as writers and artists. We are people who want to fight for creative representation in an era where it is so easy for each of us to catch fire with a spark. With these high disturbance fires, there is a greater threat, a looming storm striking bolts into each of our forests and igniting our worst fears. The heated climate, the burning political scene across the world, especially in America, drives us artists out and starves us for sustenance. So we begin to compete with our neighbors for resources. The heat it unleashes the invasive species, the massive swarms of industries and monopolies who will prey on our work. Our communities of artists are constantly plagued the intrusive fears that the beetle horde forces into our heartwood. This is not just my forest on fire. It is all of ours as creative workers. We are acquainted with the burns of both rejection and exploitation. Get on your feet, clear the underbrush, and let yourself burn to rebirth if you must. Then take that fury upon the monopolies exhaling their waste into our heated climate. Uplift each fellow life form in your communities. Stand up, spark the flame with the oil leaking from these systems' clogs. Our forests all struggle to regrow after high disturbance fires. The heat of a raging inferno can destroy the seeds in pine cones. It unlinks the ecosystem on a molecular level. The microbiome is disrupted. The connections between tree roots are severed. Organizations like Colorado's Wildlands Restoration Volunteers help the forest regrow through ecological restoration practices, often by planting drought-resistant ponderosa pines in high disturbance fire scars. That's where community becomes critically important. These organizations often rely on volunteers to restore and heal the land. I'd like to think that my high disturbance fire scars had to be touched by other human hands to regrow. I am endlessly grateful for those cheering me on, believing in me, and pushing me to get back up. There are so many people living the values and morals I've written about here. The positive message kept all of us at World of Gardian going. I found deep value in the quiet encouragement amongst a storm of hatred. Those voices sang with hope through my recovery. Thank you to all of those who have sent me words of encouragement. Even though I can't personally respond to every message, I think of them daily, those of you who still believe in me through it all. My team and family have been incredibly supportive to me during this tough time, both in my company and in my life. They are my pack, my people, and I cannot thank them enough for their trust and love for art. I wouldn't have been able to begin regrowing without the strength others gave me out of the kindness of their own hearts. Our scars can only be healed when the community bands together, as in the forest, as in the artist, as in the writers. Now, there were some footnotes referenced throughout the essay. I'm just going to read part of it that I find relevant. After internally and silently struggling with my gender identity for years, I redirected my energy into becoming hyper-feminine. I strove specifically for my dreams as an author where I could hide under a pen name, play the role of my persona, and really act the part. Because truthfully, Audra Winter was never me. If my life revolved around who I was as Audra Winter, if my videos relied on my presentation, I feared I wouldn't be successful if I changed. Throughout my life, I have been someone who struggles to listen to my own voice or watch a video of myself. As you could probably imagine, this did not fare well with the thousands of people mirroring my face back to me and referring to me exactly as the role I forced myself into. I leaned more and more into the girl boss entrepreneur businesswoman stereotype, wondering if I was uncomfortable being perceived as so because of the amount of shock I was under. But as reality sank in, I had a different realization when I flinched at every she/her, when I found myself disgusted at being so widely seen as a woman. I was playing an act when I had played all my life, but it was a reality check to be ambushed by the complete disconnection between who I was and who I was being seen as. Not on the hatred level, but simply on gender and identity. I hated seeing myself perceived as a woman. It worsened each video I watched of myself. I despised my own image. I couldn't recognize myself in old or new videos. Audra Winter never really existed. At heart, the creator of Gardian is who I am now, but I have always been far more than the fictional world I love the most. I am a naturalist, a traveler, a poet, a man. So to start, I want to make it very clear that if this is the way Milo wanted to come out, good for him. I am very happy he's finally living as himself. However, that does not exonerate him from everything that's happened. Once again, this essay is deflecting a lot, and I'm seeing certain things that need to be looked at with a closer lens. So first of all, I still haven't seen the original video that he thinks sparked everything, so obviously if the video claimed that it was a fact that the book was unedited, that's not right and that person shouldn't have said that. But Milo himself admitted to not implementing many of the edits and let all of that take a backseat to the art and the pre-orders and fanfare. It feels like semantics, but I understand why he'd feel otherwise. Another question that remains unanswered is, why do the whole multimedia thing? He speaks about being overwhelmed and constantly in shock from all the pre-orders, but then still decided to take on more and more, including starting an LLC. There is still no explanation on why all of that had to happen in the middle of all this chaos. I'm also raising eyebrows at the idea of Milo once again throwing his editors under the bus, especially after spending so much time bragging about having the editor of The Hunger Games. If you weren't happy with their work, why would you be so loud about that and use it as a flex? It just seems like an odd thing to do when you then follow it up with an investigation into the editor. I feel like there's more to this than what he's revealing, but that's just my gut feeling. He mentions being more hurt by the word scammer than anything else, and I said it before, I'm saying it again here. I don't think when this all began, there was any intention of scamming. I think that when Milo slipped into girl boss mode, and that's not misgendering, it's just a universal term, and, made everything seem like the brand was more important than the book's content, it rubbed people the wrong way and made it seem like he was all about money. This paragraph about being emotional, being an attention seeker, be casual, be informal, whatever, I have no doubt that this is exactly what it felt like. But it's also frustrating to read because literally everyone was telling him to stop saying anything at all and just take some time away. Apologize, stop making excuses, and get off the internet for a while. So if you say nothing, then you can't be too emotional, and therefore you can't be called an attention seeker. It just feels like this is the same stuff we've already heard. And as far as the cyber stalking and real life harassment, obviously completely unacceptable, but we've seen what Milo has referred to as bullying online in the past. So it is hard not to think that there might be some hyperbole in there. When Milo described reading the book and realizing how bad it was, it felt a little bit insincere to me, or else it reads like an admission that there were few edits made in the push to publish quickly, which he so readily denied in the past. He then goes on to explain about how sales suddenly stopped and he could no longer afford to employ the 20-person team, which is why everyone was screaming this in the first place. It's like he finally made the observations that all of the haters online made months ago and saying it like it's a novel thing. I don't know, maybe I'm being too critical, but that combined with saying how bad his book is makes this feel like, say it with me folks, pity marketing. In the footnotes section where Milo very candidly talks about coming to figure out his gender identity, some of the wording seems intended to separate himself from Audra, which I understand. But I think in doing so, it comes off like trying to escape accountability by saying that wasn't really me. That's all I'm going to say about that part. I don't feel comfortable getting any deeper into it myself, but I'm going to read a few threads by my pal Inglorious Gigi, who is a trans man and has, a perspective that matters more than mine does. Milo Winter, author of Age of Scorpius, is on the Blue Cloud app as well. And this really cements my opinion that the timing of his coming as trans, it is very deliberate, and he is trying to use his chosen name to rebrand, as if being trans gives him a clear slate. And I'm trans, so I can say that. Now let me be clear, this is not me saying that Milo is not a trans man. I 100% believe that he is. However, Milo is already weaponizing his trans identity, and I hate that. The trans writer community is already so small, and to have Milo come in and try to weaponize being trans to cover up his shitty behavior, that's what I take issue with. And yes, he is already doing that because in his latest blog post, he whined about being the most hated writer on the internet, and then near the end came out as if he was doing a mic drop. People are being mean to me, and you should pity me because I am a trans writer, was the entire subtext of that post. The thing about Milo Winters, author of The Age of Scorpius, is that I would have been the loudest person celebrating his social transitioning to a man, because those last few paragraphs in his latest post so familiar to my own journey as a trans man, but I can't celebrate it because the rest of the post is a pity marketing tactic that is made to make me feel sorry for Milo, and I can't. Someone replied, him still citing the video from the other indie author as the start of the criticism. I want to shake him. The self-hate that feels performative. What are we doing here, Milo? And one more that I want to mention was commented on. Winter coming out and changing their name to Milo Winter has in no way changed my opinion. I'm not saying that it's not a legitimate revelation. Only that, in my opinion, it's one more way that they can manipulate readers, rebrand, and brush off criticism for the money they took. And I'm sorry, the whole "I realized I wrote a bad book, how could I not have seen that" narrative came far too late, particularly when it's woven into such a melodramatic soliloquy. It definitely was used for that. He wants a clean slate, and I've already seen rumblings of folks calling others transphobic already. This is exactly what he wanted. He and his team said he wasn't going to post in fandom spaces or read commentary, But yet he goes to Tumblr with the least amount of chatter and posts this. Yeah, okay, the grift that keeps on grifting. And there is a screenshot of this post from Tumblr. Milo Winter writes and says, "How long until someone realizes I have an account on here?" And the hashtags say several things, but "I'm not Audra Winter anymore, sorry." Clearly, that feels like trying to get some attention. So going back to where this person said, "I've already seen rumblings of folks being called transphobic," and that's what Milo wanted. As I was writing out this script, I absolutely felt this. I know I'm not transphobic, but I have written and rewritten this part of the video because I am all too aware that there will be people ready to label me a transphobe if I'm too critical. And yeah, I do think that is something that Milo is aware of. So that was, you know, a point of view of a trans person and someone whose opinions I highly respect. As mentioned here, Milo is starting to come back to social media. He has a Threads and a Blue Sky account now, and has also started a Tumblr where, you know, it wasn't much of a focus on the whole saga, and so he can start fresh. These are just things people have brought up. The new version of The Age of Scorpius now has 64 pre-orders for anyone else keeping track like I am. And Milo did end up making a TikTok post slideshow thing. September, October paperback pre-order status. Now that September and October have passed, I want to reiterate that all the TikTok Shop paperback pre-orders previously meant to deliver September to October will now be shipped in late spring 2026. The paperback pre-order will be printed as the second edition of The Age of Scorpius, hence the delay into spring. But active TikTok Shop listing pre-orders, paperback old cover, hardcover, new cover, will be fulfilled in the same batch/shipping period. Please reach out to us via the TikTok Shop or team@worldofguardian.com if you need to change your address or order details due to a delayed shipment. And there are just some more of the slides. Say first edition ebook. The horrors of the first edition have been unleashed again. If you're searching for the first edition ebook, it is available for discounted sale on worldofguardian.com. Please stop pirating my work. Though there are many flaws in the first edition of AOS, it is still my first book baby. Gardian is a passion project I have spent years on, and a shared labor of love between my own heart and the World of Guardian team as a whole. I mean, get it, I guess. If people are pirating your book anyways, may as well put it up for sale. Why did I disappear for a couple of months? This is probably the last time you'll see my face for a bit. Never actually told us why, but I don't know. Maybe he means because he was transitioning? I don't know. And then there is a quote from High Disturbance. I actually didn't read this part. Here in Norway, I'm working alongside Solly, World of Guardian's art director, as we strive to reimagine the second version of The Age of Scorpius. Beyond the veil of many internet conspiracies concerning my disappearance, I simply crashed out and decided I needed to set my life on fire. I moved out of my apartment in Colorado, dropped my stuff in Kansas, and flew to Helsinki. Solly welcomed me to Finland with the goal of kicking ass for Gardian. We are working closely together for The Age of Scorpius to weave a story unified with prose and illustration. We'll have more to announce soon. At this time, I ask that you please respect my privacy. I will not be showing my face in any videos or content until the release of the second edition, unless I feel comfortable enough to do so earlier. But that doesn't mean we're not coming back strong. We'll be sharing teasers, trailers, and excerpts of book content, including the chapters we already promised to you, here and on Patreon as Solly and I recreate The Age of Scorpius. So that's the latest on this story. Other than the obvious, not much seems to have changed, at least as far as accountability and understanding why things went the way they did. While he maybe has a little more self-awareness than before, the incessant need to shift blame onto that one TikToker whose video he saw, his former editors, his haters, it doesn't feel much different than the things he was saying before. Now, I would love to be wrong, I really would, but speaking only for myself, I need more proof that lessons have been learned here before I'm over it. Okay, a few quick housekeeping things before moving on to our indie author feature. Many of you already have seen the announcement and have joined, but I will be shutting down my Patreon completely within the next day or so because I've launched a Bindery page. Now, this is very similar to Patreon, but it's focused especially on books. A lot of the, I think, founders, if not founders, people that are developers there previously worked for Patreon. And much like Patreon, there is a free tier, in addition to a $5 tier if you want some extras. There is a link in the description to join, and everyone who joins before November 20th will be entered to win a $100 gift card to bookshop.org, courtesy of Bindery. I did move that date out just a little since I was on vacation and wasn't able to get this video up, so if you saw something else, you did. So yeah, if that's something you'd be interested in, definitely go and check it out. Additionally, I've added a couple of forms in the description for different features. I mentioned wanting to talk about small businesses, some for the holidays, so I've added a form for that if you are interested in being featured. And I've also had several folks mention that they want to submit an author that is not themselves for my author feature segment, so I added a separate form for that. All that said, let's talk about today's indie author, which is R. Haven. He is a horror and fantasy author from Ontario, Canada. He's won the Inkwell Literary Festival Award for one of his short stories, and his debut novel, The Other Face of Sympathy, came out in September 2025. When not writing, R. Haven corrects board games, listens to musical soundtracks, and dotes on his kid, who insists she's not afraid of anything her dad can dish out. So The Other Face of Sympathy follows a man named Edward Barrett, who has left everything by his grandma when she dies by suicide. Having been homeless, Edward unquestioningly moves into her apartment, unaware that she left something behind, something that sinks his teeth into his very existence. His one shot at figuring out what's haunting him and saving himself is inside the journals he picked up from Other Side Book Exchange. The writers were all victims and all became monsters following their deaths. Between the off-putting proprietor of Other Side, a soft-spoken woman named Conscience, and the distressing contents of the journals, Edward has no choice but to come around to the idea that otherworldly horrors exist. And they're all around him. If he wants to save himself from being eaten alive, he needs to find the diary of the monster preying on him. The Other Face of Sympathy features a transgender protagonist exploring the way society weaponizes trauma to turn people into monsters, in this case, literal ones, by reading the diaries of people who became otherworldly creatures. Down in the description, I will link R. Haven's social media, as well as where you can purchase his book if it sounds like something you'd enjoy. Indie authors are a vital part of the bookish community, so try to support them however you can, even if that just means a follow on social media. And if you'd like to be featured or have someone you'd like to nominate, there are forms down in the description as well. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, I would love it if you would. Make sure to check out my Bindery page if you'd like to support me over there, and I'll see you in the next one.